Now, that's to be taken as history, and a large segment of the population insists that that actually happened in the third dimension 2,000 years ago, when, essentially we have a very similar story and pattern and a number of motifs in other cultures, and it's taken to be myth. So in reality, there really is no evidence that this took place on planet Earth, and I'm referring specifically about the gospel story, which I just sort of gave a general outline of.
Yes.
There's no serious credible scientific, valid evidence, proof of this happening in the third dimension, in that part of the world, in that culture. And indeed, when you start examining it, the story in great detail, in its proper context, with all these other different cultures around, using the primary sources in their original languages, wherever we can find them, and you look at the story in the milieu of the Mediterranean, you start to see that this could only have been contrived in the same way that we believe the priesthoods of other cultures contrived their myths. In other words, if we were to dismiss Zeus and Hercules and Krishna and Mithra and Horus and all these characters, I say dismiss because that's what most people think calling them myths means. But if we were to deem them myths, then we also must look at our own sacred cows as current sacred cows as being myths as well, created by the same processes, by the same priesthood, over and over again, the same story.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. We're going to take a break here. Very interesting. We're talking to Acharya S, and her site is truthbeknown.com. My name is Jay Weidner. You're listening to Smoke and Mirrors Radio Hour every Monday through Friday from 6 to 7 right here. And we'll be right back. Thanks for listening. We've got lots of good stuff coming. It's going to be a great conversation, I can tell. We'll be right back. Thanks. And we're back. My name is Jay Weidner. You're listening to Smoke and Mirrors Radio Hour every Monday through Friday right here on the Rents Radio Network. I want to remind everyone that it just went up on jayweidner.com, my new article, Secrets of the Shining. It'll probably be up on rents.com here fairly soon. The subtitle is, or How Faking the Moon Landings Nearly Cost Stanley Kubrick His Marriage and His Life. And it's about the movie The Shining, of which I have completely deconstructed and prove, I believe beyond any shadow of a doubt, that Stanley Kubrick not only filmed the Apollo moon landings, but they nearly killed him and destroyed his marriage to his beautiful wife Christina. So definitely check that out. I think it's going to have a lot of hits, and I think it actually proves, by the way, that Stanley did it. And the secret's been hidden inside The Shining for 30 years, and it's coming out right now, and I think you're going to be blown away by it. Anyway, it's up there right now at Jay Weidner. That's JayWeidner.com. We're talking to Acharya S, and her site is truthbeknown.com, and we're talking about the origins of religion and Christianity and all sorts of good things. Acharya, do you know about this new book that is, I believe it's in Hebrew, but it's being translated right now? It's called How the Jews Invented Their History.
I don't know that one, no.
Oh, well, this is a great book. I haven't read it, but this is a book written by the head of the history department at Tel Aviv University, and it's the #1 bestseller in Israel and has been for a year now. It is being translated, and this guy proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that there was no Moses, that there was no Solomon, there was no David, that the Jews actually rewrote their history to backdate it because they were so jealous of the Greeks. And they backdated it so it looked like the Jewish God was giving the scoop long before the Greeks. What's interesting about this, though, is the Jewish God, as you well know, is Yahweh, or translated into Latin or English is Jove or Jehovah. But Jehovah is Jove, which is Jupiter, which is Zeus, essentially. Right, yeah. So the Jews and the Christians have essentially been worshiping Zeus for 2,000 years. And they talk about us worshiping pagan gods and things, you know. It just cracks me up. I mean, here it is. Their name is Jehovah. I have a church down the street from me called the Jehovah Witnesses, and you know, they knock on my door and I tell them, "Oh, so you're the witnesses for Zeus?" And they don't get it. They don't get it. It's right there in the title of their god. I mean, what Zeus essentially did, according to this book, was he fired all the other gods and made himself the only god. Really?
Well, that's the kind of what is called henotheism, but they kind of shared in the Olympic pantheon. They kind of shared powers and so forth, but he certainly was the top dog. He had the last word. But you know, you see that they're always bickering amongst themselves, and the Greek gods, the great stories. Now, it reminds me of when I was a kid. I was very fond of reading the stories of Greek myths. And they were great. They were colorful. They reflected humanity in its many forms, good or bad, you know. And you didn't have to believe in them in this era. They weren't going to get you if you didn't believe in them, which is a little bit different from the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition. You know, if you don't believe in them right now, in this, if you don't believe in Yahweh, Allah, God, the Old Testament, you know, the nasty guy, then he's gonna get you and throw you in hell, and even Jesus is gonna torture you according to the New Testament and so forth. It never ends. There's always this threatening and jumping on your case. So the Greek gods are a little bit more playful, and they're a little more accepting of the human condition, human nature. But at the same time, I didn't find the explanations of the myths to be all that satisfying. There's a lot of psychobabble, and yeah, that's great, you know, teaching us about our inner spirituality and so forth, and the psychological makeup. That's great, and that's very helpful to humanity. But there's also this whole hidden layer that almost never gets exposed that is much more interesting to me because it goes beyond human neuroses and psychoses, and there's only so much of that I can take. You know, it's like watching a soap opera on a loop endlessly. But this grandiose cosmic scheme that has been recorded in these myths is far more interesting after a certain point. It has to do with how profound is the effect of the sun on the Earth, for example. How much we need the solar cycles for life to continue. The effect of the sun's rays in the moon and having that second night light. All these wonderful qualities of the sky, both day and night, as well as the earthly factors like the wind and the water and so forth. They were all relished as something with meaning, and to the point of having divinity bestowed upon them by the human perception. And I rather like that perception because it gives you the feeling of when you're, let's say, I always use this as an example because it strikes me constantly. I still climb mountains and see wonderful views, and I climb a mountain and I sit up there and there's a magnificent sunset and there's like the waves of hills in front of me or other mountains, and the sky is a riot of colors and it extends out into the cosmos for all eternity, for infinity, to plug your newest project. And so you can sit there and experience that and really understand. That's the meaning that's trying to be conveyed by our most profound spiritual traditions.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And I think that returning to the sacred earth is probably the real way out of our predicament right now. And my name is Jay Weidner. We're going to take a break. We're here with Acharya S. talking about religions and their lack of illumination, maybe even their lack of credibility in some cases. Anyway, I'm Jay Weidner, and we'll be right back. Thanks for listening, and make sure you look up that article, The Shining.